Hi all, I'm Emily O'Callaghan and I come to you from Gadigal land where I live, work and learn, and I pay my respect to elders past and present. This is an acknowledgement of country. It's given in Australia to recognise the traditional custodians of our land and acknowledge the continuing connection of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples to land, waters and culture. I think one of the great things about education abroad is that connectedness to country and culture. And I believe we have a role working in these programs and in international education to promote that genuine connection and understanding both home and abroad. So before I start, welcome. But before that, I just want to acknowledge a few people that have been a part of this journey and the incredible work of the team at miXabroad. Here online, we have Peter Muntz, our Director Communications. Pete, thanks also for joining the session. And a big thank you to Greg Gowanowski, our Director Tech and Analytics. Many tireless hours went into these insights and it's very much appreciated. I also want to give a big thank you to the Advisory Council. They've played an incredible part, not just in these insights, but also in refining the survey tool as well. And their expert advice, whether that be from education abroad to internationalisation at home, has been instrumental. And that's throughout the creation of miXabroad. So thank you to them. Okay, so thank you for joining miXabroad's first global webinar, unpacking our latest findings from the Global Benchmark Report 2025. Also very pleased to have a number of our partners on this call as well. They really took a leap of faith in supporting this new initiative, and their commitment, trust and support has made this work possible. So thank you to our partners. On that, these findings, it's a pilot benchmark and they reflect experiences from these founding institutions. So the majority of these students were based in English-speaking countries from Australia, New Zealand, the United States and the United Kingdom, with one partner, Cattolica, in Italy. But as such, these insights should be understood as a subset of global mobility rather than a complete picture. However, miXabroad was created as a global benchmark and this pilot is just the beginning. So we're looking forward to broadening that participation, engaging students from a wider range of regions, languages and cultural contexts, and building a richer understanding of the impact of education abroad across those diverse settings. I also wanted to highlight that whilst we break down the data into regions, which you'll see shortly, it's only a very small subset of institutions in those regions, as you can see. So these regional comparisons will have greater evidence base as we increase those partners, but please keep that in mind as we do look particularly at the impact of these programs for the US, the UK and Australia. But before we get into it, a bit about miXabroad. So miXabroad is a global benchmark. We use student feedback to measure impact and experience in education abroad and internationalisation at home. So we do that across work and study and virtual programs, including COIL and in-person experiences also. And that made up the majority of the experiences that we'll present to you today. We also look at importance and satisfaction factors across the student journey from application to in-program and re-entry. And one of the key things that we do with our partners is looking at proving the value of these international experiences. So for this webinar, we'll not just be unpacking student motivations and satisfaction, but also the impact of these programs. So a bit more on the cohort. The benchmark report unpacks experiences from 4,200 students across 100 countries. And today or this evening, we'll cover the student decision-making, student impact and destination insights and more. There'll also be a chance at the end for some Q&A, which Pete will moderate, but we're also happy to take questions as they come up. So as I'm presenting some of these insights, please use that Q&A function that you'll see there in the middle to reach out, or the chat function if you've got any queries along the way. We're happy to address those as they come up. So let's get started. So this is the cohort again that we will be looking at today. 4,200 plus students, 100 countries and 21 founding partners, as I said. So first, decision making. Um, what motivates students and when they decided to undertake these experiences. So globally, almost 50% of students decide to undertake these experiences prior to starting university. And as you can see for the UK and US cohort, that increases to 60% of students already having this planned before they actually commence their studies at university. So many other students also within that first year are actually deciding to undertake these programs. And then interestingly for the Australian cohort there, you can see that some of those are making that decision a little later. So 25% deciding a little bit closer to their experience that they're wanting to have an international experience as part of their studies. So what does that mean for institutions? And we'll try and highlight this along the way. So not just looking at the data and the insights, but actually what it means or the what. It actually just means that we not only need to engage students early in these programs, but given that they're already wanting to undertake these experiences, it's key to highlight this in your offerings. So as you're recruiting students, actually highlighting that these programs exist, and then obviously providing them with information around where they can access more information across that application process all the way through to the experiences. It's also key to, I guess, use as a promoter for and to leverage in terms of the value of these programs with leadership. So actually noting with leadership that these programs aren't just a nice have, it's actually a necessity. So the students that are wanting to go to your institutions, they're wanting to have international experiences as part of their degree. So really understanding that and actually using that as a key recruitment tool is a great way to also involve leadership in proving that value of these programs as well. Okay. And so why do they actually want to undertake or engage in an international experience? Well, overwhelmingly, it's to experience something different, understand another culture, and connect and create networks. So, though the focus, I guess, for many of us working in education abroad, and particularly when education abroad teams are located in the careers teams, etc., it is often on career readiness and employability, but this matters less to students. So as you can see, improving job prospects, improving career readiness, a little bit lower in terms of the motivation. Still, a third of students undertaking these experiences for that reason. But most of the, I guess, key motivation is about personal development. So curating programs with that focus is key. This is particularly given the ever-changing job market as well. So with the rise of AI, this seeking of personal transformation needs to be a focus as we create these programs. It's what the students are looking for, but also these human-centric motivators transcend those AI threats to employability. So it's really creating or ensuring students that when they're finishing their degree, they've got those amazing graduate outcomes and they can take those into the workforce as well, whatever jobs are out there at any given time. And I'll touch on that a little bit later when we actually look at the impact of these programs as well. So on student impact, a key challenge for miXabroad is actually proving that value. And it's not just through external advocacy, such as these webinars or conference presentations and reports, which hopefully you've already dived into, and that's why you're on this session today. But it's also supporting institutions to really understand how their programs are impactful, where there's support required to ensure greatest impact, and where there's perhaps opportunities to improve. So part of that's working with institutions to ensure that leadership and the wider university can see the value of these programs as well. And so helping those teams advocate for greater resourcing and or at least continued resourcing in these programs. But how do we measure impact? So we measure impact across 21 impact measures, and then we group those into 6 key areas. So looking at, as you can see, the biggest area, personal growth and self-awareness is a key impact area for students, cultural competency and global awareness, social and environmental impact, career and professional development, learning and applied outcomes, and communication and interpersonal skills. And so now again, this is where I just highlight that this is a very small representative group of universities in those regions, but we thought we would highlight some some of those comparators, and I think some light regional competition never hurt anyone. So we've put that some US, UK, and Australia comparators throughout this report as well. So looking at this, I guess our US partners are producing slightly more impactful experiences comparatively, but globally, all programs are having an incredibly positive impact for students. And it's really key that these are in areas that, as I said, drive students to undertake these experiences. So again, that personal transformation, not only is it a key driver, but we're seeing some really great impact for the students in that area. So 95% of students, as I said, globally, are actually seeing that positive impact. So we'll break that down. So firstly, looking at learning and applied outcomes, 85% impact globally, so positive impact for students. Where that's slightly lacking, that academic performance. So when we're actually looking at how that academic performance is broken down, 73% positive impact for Australia, 70% UK, and 76% for the US. When we dove a little bit deeper into the data there, we also saw that there's some negative experiences there. So some students, 4% of students globally, felt that it negatively impacted their academic performance. And that was made up of 150 students, and 125 of those were from semester programs. So those longer programs possibly needing to ensure that those students are still connecting academically as well. But again, a very small cohort that had that negative impact, 4%. Communication and interpersonal skills saw great impact, so 88.4% globally. And it's key that one of those drivers underneath that is a key driver for students in terms of making those connections as well. So that key impact area in terms of engaging people from other cultures saw 97% impact globally. So 96, 97, 98 for Australia, UK, and US. Career and professional development. So again, these factors in terms of the motivations for students aren't as high, but still 83% positive impact globally. And again, that key driver of connecting with people coming through. So connection, a huge positive impact on their network of friends and connections. So 95, and 92% there. As noted, personal growth and self-awareness was the highest impact category. And so those critical areas of understanding self, resilience, self-confidence, and personal growth and development, all above 90% positive impact. So again, incredibly impactful programs. And our final two areas of impact, social and environmental impact, saw 87% positive impact globally. I think an interesting one to highlight here is that key difference under attitudes about environmental issues. So looking at the US context there, so Australians 78% positive impact, 72% for the UK, but the US cohort saw an 88% positive impact. So also when looking at these programs, I think it's important again to understand that home. And so understanding a regional context of home, as well as obviously the regional context of the host in which they're going to as well. But I just found that a really interesting insight that those students from the US are actually seeing a far more positive impact when it comes to attitudes about environmental issues as well. And apologies for my voice, I'm just going to blame the 11 p.m. call on that. But hopefully that sticks with me along the way. Cultural competency and global awareness had 86% positive impact. And I think looking at the understanding of different cultures is key here. 98% globally saw a positive impact, so 96, 97, and then massive 99% for the US in terms of understanding different cultures. Interestingly, and again, coming back to the, I guess, understanding self and how these programs help students also feel more connected to home. I think having a look at the, oh, sorry, that's on the next. So previous slide, sorry, understanding of self was also a really key highlight here as well. So really interesting just to see that incredible impact for students, and that, I guess, connection not just to the country that they're going to, but feeling like they understand themselves and they understand their home country a little bit more as well as a part of these experiences. So again, each of these impact areas really clearly evidence those key areas that I was talking to in terms of having that value of programs that aren't just those career readiness, actually looking at and considering, given the AI-driven landscape that we face ahead, these human-centric attributes, so the empathy, the creativity and problem solving, cross-cultural understanding, and adaptability and resilience. And so these are really incredible factors, not just personally, but in a professional context as well. And I think being able to truly connect and listen and respond to those human needs is something that AI can't do. So I think it's something that these programs truly deliver. And I think that's another way that we can really prove value of these programs globally, is that they will prepare humans for that kind of next step into a less traditional workforce, and provide those skills and attributes that are needed for the future. So moving ahead on program length, another key finding from the report was that the length of program doesn't necessarily impact doesn't necessarily see more positive impact. And so ultimately, there's a key driver for these programs here as well, in terms of one, some of the longer programs, so semester abroad or longer, 4 week plus programs, just aren't accessible for students. So certain cohorts may have commitments back home, they may lack finance, or they may face barriers. So it's really great to see that these shorter programs are, one, obviously more accessible to all cohorts, but still incredibly impactful. So each of those programs, and when we broke it down for some institutions, some of those short programs were actually more impactful, just because of the way that they were designed to have impact for students. So something to consider as well, that the length of program doesn't necessarily provide more impact for students. Pete, is there anything in the Q&A, or I'll continue?
No questions so far.
Excellent. All right. So I'll continue on to social and cultural experience. So this is where, again, we dive into, I guess, one of those key motivators of students actually wanting to meet and connect. So we've already seen that it is impactful for them, so it does have a positive impact. But what we're also seeing is that students generally are very satisfied with the opportunities that are provided to them, particularly the opportunities to undertake the experience, one, with other students that are undertaking international experiences, and so potentially other international students, being in the same dorms or being in the same programs. Actually, those are the people that they meet around them. And again, that kind of close to home, developing new friendships with roommates and housemates, very positive, or very satisfied students in terms of that. When we break down the data, we do look at this satisfied versus very satisfied. And particularly when we're working with institutions, we want them to understand those granular differences. And so when they're actually implementing any type of, improvement over time, they can actually track not just the satisfied students, but the very satisfied. And then obviously we look at dissatisfaction rates for institutions as well. But here, I think one of the key outcomes is, yes, they're having positive experiences and they're meeting and connecting with people, but they're not as satisfied as those opportunities to develop friendships with people from the host country. So there's definitely a gap there in terms of, one, when you're hosting students, supporting students to actually connect with local students, domestic students, and also local communities, and two, actually ensuring that the students can have those, I guess, impactful connections as well, so that when they're returning home, they still have that connection to country. Again, this is a key motivator for students, and so it's a really, I guess, key area for not just as sending out an outbound student and really talking to them about the importance of connection in community, but when you're hosting, actually providing those opportunities as well. And breaking that down, just so we can actually dive a bit deeper, spotlighting that in terms of what that looks like across the insights that we've got and across different countries, it does vary. So as much as students aren't as satisfied, it varies significantly by their host destination as well. So you can see, and I'll put a spotlight on my own country right now, Australia. Australia down at 17 there, 70% of students were satisfied. Which isn't super low, but it is low comparatively, particularly looking at Indonesia there at 93. But also what's a little worrying there is that 18% dissatisfied. So you've got almost 20% of a cohort going home feeling dissatisfied and feeling like they didn't have enough opportunities to actually connect locally. And so I think this is key as well, really understanding when you're sending students to these destinations, that they might need to go out of their way a bit more to connect, because these won't just happen organically. The students or the institutions will actually need to create opportunities for the students to do this. And I liked this semester abroad student from Australia to the Netherlands just saying, I wish I had known how important it was to build those local connections. So moving on, and a few more destination specific insights. So firstly, and this gives, I guess, a bit of a better idea of where the data came from as well in terms of the students. So United Kingdom hosted 404 students, United States 331, Spain 261, Japan 255. Really interesting to see there, Japan 255 students and still 100% likelihood to recommend. But if you look down that list, the lowest likelihood to recommend is 94%. So still amazingly satisfied students and some really key ambassadors. So when your students are returning, one, definitely use them as ambassadors for these programs, to promote the programs, to promote this impact and value, but also use them in that connective piece. Think about how they might act as locals when you're hosting students, to connect them in with that local community as well, because they are willing to advocate for these programs. So they would be perhaps willing to be in any type of buddy program, etc., to support your international students in connecting locally as well. But that's where the students, the data comes from in terms of those host destinations. Cost of living is a key issue for students globally, and we unpack this across a few different areas in the survey. These, I guess, this cost of living or affordability rate is made up of a number of questions in the survey. So we have questions around cost of accommodation, cost of local transport, and cost of going out, cost of dining out, and then cost of groceries. So these five critical questions then become one overall cost of living tool, so that we can assess where students were or weren't satisfied. And again, this is a perceived cost of living. So what we've actually also seen is we do ask a question in the survey, and when we've been unpacking some of these insights with our institutional partners, one of the survey questions is in the applying and preparation stage, the satisfaction with the information on cost of living and the satisfaction with the information on cost of accommodation. And we've seen that where students are satisfied at that early stage of the journey with what's being provided in terms of that information, they're actually more satisfied in general with the cost of living. So again, it's a perception of students, and some of that is real. You can see that those key host destinations of the UK, United States, Australia, down at the bottom 20 there, they are also high cost destinations, compared particularly to Vietnam, Indonesia, India, Thailand, etc. But part of that is also just the advice that the students are receiving before they depart, and in terms of what these experiences may cost. So that's cost of living. I think another thing that varied significantly by destination was safety. Um, and again, this is safety perceptions. But overwhelmingly, we saw that, and there were two critical questions here: is how safe did the students feel in the local area, and then how safe did they feel on campus? And overwhelmingly, they felt safe on campus. So the students always have, I guess, a safe place to go. But there were a number of, I guess, lower safety destinations, and again, some of those key host destinations were in there. So number 23, United States, 72% said that they felt safe in the local area. but again, 92% on campus. So part of this is, advising students before they go that there are support services available that to connect with campus and the communities on campus. But also, again, part of that connecting with local communities and that sense of belonging, having somewhere to go and someone locally really helps, I think, with that sense of safety and security as well. So I think it's, again, that key missing piece, that connection locally. Uh, Next, we have this, I guess, key question within the survey where we ask what they wish they'd known. So, upon return and reflection on the experience, what did they wish they'd known? And so just an open qualitative question. And it really resonated with particularly some of those quantitative questions we had around cost of living and dissatisfaction, and also the information around cost of living application and the dissatisfaction there. There was a lot of open answers around cost of living and budgeting, and students saying that they'd underestimated for that cost. And a lot of students did also note that the stress that caused them whilst they're overseas. Visas, admin, and paperwork, and visas in particular, was a key issue for the UK. But comparatively for all institutions, it was an issue, and obviously a number of institutions can't or provide advice on visas, but I think providing advice on the length of time it may take, or even things like it will be a stressful process. Students overwhelmingly said that it was just a difficult process. The unknown caused their anxiety in terms of understanding whether or not they would get a visa. And they also obviously noted that sometimes that actually limited the amount of time they spent abroad because they got there a little bit later and felt like they couldn't catch up as well. So key just in terms of that application and preparation, them understanding how long that might take in terms of timeframes and even the stresses that might come with it. Arrival and settling in. So many students wish that they had that kind of clearer picture of what was about to happen. They said that when they actually got in country, as much as there were support services and orientation services available, it was about like an influx of communication. So many of them wanted that clear advice prior to leaving about transport and accommodation, but even things like the host university systems. So one, when you're hosting institutions as well, maybe don't wait until orientation to provide all of that information at once. Maybe feed that through to them in a way before they arrive, and then obviously re-engage them at that orientation as well. But that they said that first week shock was real. So and we do and did break down some key insights around culture shock as well, and also return culture shock. But it was just interesting looking at those key themes, and they, again, as I said, resonated in that quant data as well. So before we head into Q&A, and we may have questions, we may not, we'll see, Pete. As we've addressed, students are driven by personal growth, and these programs can have amazing impact. So we've seen that impact through all of those 6 broader areas. But it's important to center that program design around what drives them, but also where the impact is. And then the career and employability outcomes will naturally flow from that. Lead with personal benefits in communication. So that's what drives the students. So make sure that they're aware that that's what these programs will bring, and really start that engagement early. So we saw they started, 60% for the UK, 60% for the US in terms of actually wanting to undertake these experiences prior to even starting the university. So start that engagement early, ensure that they know how to access these experiences, access the Education Abroad office, and what that means in terms of planning for their degree as well. Also, again, use that within your recruitment strategies as well, to ensure that when they arrive on campus, they're aware and they know exactly where to go. Measure what matters most, and track that over time. So obviously miXabroad is a global survey, and that's one way of doing that. But if you aren't already surveying your students, miXabroad or not, there's some easy, quick ways to survey students, and it's a great time to start, just to give yourselves a benchmark of where your students are at. and think about, where you might be able to make change. So using that data to inform those decision making process, and then again strengthening student support across every stage of that journey, because that's where we see the greatest impact for students. So with that, I'll go to Q&A.
Nice work. Gosh, I work with that data every day, and there were even some insights there, some surprise insights there that I hadn't picked up on. And I particularly like the connection you made to AI and the role of learning abroad and how it develops those human skills that AI is never going to be able to replace.
Yeah, it was actually just something last week. I was looking at, I can't remember what the research article was, but ultimately around, the way that higher education, I guess, changed at one stage to look at, okay, we need to be producing, job ready graduates, and it was always about producing that almost like vocational education style of, having those specific skills for that specific role, rather than actually, creating, people for a world that might be ever changing. So yeah, really nice to then reflect on the impact of these programs and think about, wow, we can not only just show that these programs are impactful, but there's, yeah, this huge space where we can actually say that, yeah, that's where the students need to be, um, I guess, improving themselves and developing those key attributes for that unknown workforce. So yeah, exciting
Yeah,
time.
brilliant. So if anyone does have any questions, you can just pop a question into the Q&A. We've got our first question here from Opal. Not a question, but a comment, which is great. We welcome comments. Thank you for linking the findings to specific recommended actions for our officers. So,
Thanks, Opal. Yeah, no, and we're super excited. So for reference for the people on the call, Michigan State University are one of our partners, and their survey is now live. So some of this data is MSU students, but as we collect more data, we'll then be able to produce those institution-specific insights for Opal, and I'm really looking forward to meeting with you and eager to unpack those, Opal.
mhm. One thing I was interested to come back to was you talking about local connections, because obviously with international and domestic students as a whole, like it's very hard to forge those connections, and international students often feel disconnected. And it seems like from the results that education abroad students face similar challenges. Just wondering whether you have any thoughts on what institutions can do to help facilitate those connections.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I think also, obviously this is an outward learning abroad survey, so but a lot of it has implications for inbound as well. So one, I guess, for outbound managers actually thinking about, informing students that it's going to be a normal thing and normal context to be put into a situation where you're dealing with other or feeling organically connected to other students, either from your home or other international students, as the survey shows. Students feel like those opportunities are there, but that the frameworks aren't necessarily in place to connect with locals, but it's really important. So actually putting it in their mindset that that's something that they need to do as well, and use their own agency to make those connections. Ways that they can do that we've seen coming through, particularly the qualitative responses as well. We have a question that is, in a few words or sentences, what was most impactful for you? And those local connections, there's things about, as part of the program, they went outside and did their own volunteering, or they went and joined community networks of people from their own culture. So they might have been,
Mm.
an Italian living in Australia, and then they went to Austria, but there was an Italian community there that they connected with, etc. So actually looking at what other ways to connect with community and making sure students know that. And then as a host, just providing those connections. So actually making sure that you've got those frameworks in place, thinking about those buddy programs, thinking about how you can use your returned students as not just ambassadors for these programs, as I said, but to actually connect international students so that they are feeling that sense of belonging. And then also just making sure that when students are there, they are aware of different communities in your local area, and different places that they can go to connect.
Yeah, excellent. I guess that's really what it's all about, isn't it, when it comes down to it?
Oh, definitely. And so it's been, I think that's the missing piece. And I think most of us, I guess, knew that. When students return, often they've got these very global connections, but sometimes they do speak about that feeling like, oh, I didn't really meet enough locals.
Yeah.
So I think we already knew there was a gap there, but the data really shows that, yeah, there's definitely more opportunity to create
Mm.
those, and it does need effort. It's not just going to organically happen.
Yeah. Okay. We don't have any other questions.
Awesome.
So if now's your last chance to ask any questions, but I think everyone must be pretty satisfied with those results and that overview of the global report.
Oh, that's great. Anyone, if you do have any questions, after the call, obviously, reach out to us. We can more than happy to jump on a call as well and go into a bit more detail on the insights. Sometimes it's hard to put your hand up on these things and pose a question. Um, on that as well, we'll continue to be providing insights and pushing out, I guess, further insights from the data in terms of blogs, etc. So do stay tuned to that. We will share the recording of this webinar with participants, and those that obviously were unable to attend. But yeah, just thanks for making the time, and yeah, we'll give you 8 minutes back of your days, and Pete and I have an 11:37 p.m.
Head off to
finish.
We do have one last question. I spoke
Oh,
to
okay, yeah,
you.
go for it.
Yeah. You happy to take one more question?
Of course, of course.
So Catriona says, how may you unpack difference in impact of short-term programs versus impact of longer-term study abroad, when for some the impact variables, it's challenging to substantiate how they can lead to the same positive impact?
Completely agree. And it's been there's a few different, I guess, areas where we don't understand the background necessarily of these programs. So some of the things we're wanting to unpack further is definitely this short program versus long program, and what the impact looks like for those students. As I said, we are seeing that the short programs are as impactful, but there's an assumption that that may be because they're more curated. So a lot of them are faculty led. They're designed particularly with certain things in mind, like connecting people to local communities. So there is some of the data showing that for those shorter programs, students are feeling a bit more connected because that's quite purposeful. As we said, it doesn't happen organically. So I think those shorter programs, in a sense, particularly compared to semester programs, um, have frameworks in place that are focused on impact areas, and the way that they're designed is around certain impact areas as well. So one, it will be impactful to the students, but also if the student's already aware that that's the impact that it's supposed to have, they're actually thinking about it. So another key theme we've seen is sometimes where programs are hosted out of careers offices, the motivations around career and job readiness are a little bit stronger. So it's like something that the students are already thinking about, possibly because the people that have guided them throughout the program have been asking them to consider that as well. So there's a number of things that I guess the institutional context is key. And so when we're presenting back to institutions, we have a number of questions about not just the different support practices they have in place, but that whole context for the institution and what that looks like for different program types, and also student cohort types as well. And I know it's taking a while, but this the other thing with the student cohort type is we're hoping to eventually unpack um, different different cohort types, particularly looking at equity and access students. And currently, there's a few different identifiers in there. Obviously, with minority cohorts, it's tricky. You want to have a massive data to ensure that you can make assumptions. Currently, what we're seeing is that the programs aren't um, different by student cohort type. But again, it's all an institutional context of perhaps that's because they are more supported or there is more funding, or so without that context, these are assumptions, and they're basically just a way that we can promote that student voice and show that there is value in these programs. Um, hopefully that's helpful in the context of that question.
Excellent, great response. I think that brings us to the end of today's session.